Good afternoon on what is a surprisingly mild, bright and sunny day. It is January 29th. I am in the reading Nook. It's a Sunday and I've got a box to continue unboxing. And of course, a nice hot cup of tea. Okay, so now I've already been through this box and I have pulled out things like Man, Myth and Magic. And the very nice Princess Bride role-playing game. Below that, what have I got? I have something a little odd. Now I should explain that a friend of mine in the States, in California, goes to a convention every year called Strategicon. And they don't have much in the way of dealers, but what he's doing for the past couple of years is he has broadcast to us what he's found at the dealers' tables, and basically the equivalent of the bring and buy, and we've picked up some interesting things. I picked up a couple of box sets for RuneQuest, got a copy of ElfQuest, and the last thing that he picked up for me was this, which is Legacy, a role-playing game I had actually never heard of. Now, that's not surprising. There are lots of role-playing games out there, but this one dates back to 1978. I'd say I hadn't heard of it. It wasn't one that was sort of like that I was fully aware of. I've got a copy of a book called Heroic Worlds by Lawrence Schick, which I've had since the early 90s, and I have read it a couple of times. It's an encyclopedia of role-playing games up until the early 90s, so I have read that to cover. I would have seen it in there and mentioned, oh, that's interesting. And probably when Scott saw this on the table, I went, hold on, that's it, grab it, because I am interested in old role-playing games and what they're like. For example, a couple of years ago, I did a review and also an unboxing of an infamous role-playing game called Spawn of Fashan, which is as interesting and as terrible as the title might suggest. But yeah, so this comes in, it's quite a sturdy little book on quite stiff paper. You've got the cover, which is very, almost like vellum-like. And then we have, basically open up, we've got the basically contents page and reference. Okay, the designer's page. Then we get into the preface, where this really kind of weird artwork. And this is kind of difficult to really kind of make out what it is. You've got introduction, organisation, table of contents, definitions, and so on. So here we've got the discussion of the organisation. Then we've got the table of contents. It's really dense text, and the other thing, looking at something like Spawn of Fashan suffers from the same problem. Lots of dense text, let alone weird ideas. And we get into definitions, and the definitions include terrain symbols. And we have to remember that 1978 is a time when role-playing games were relatively new. They were definitely coming out of the war game origins as much as anything, and so therefore you needed terrain and maps, and so of course you still do today, but this is baking it in right from the start. Definition of terms, it's definition of terms, and then we have the definition of terms. That's not so much a definition as sort of like full explanation for each of them, and then we've got their remarks, commentary on what's just gone before. Which it says the legacy rules are complex, and no matter what precautions are taken by the designer and the reader, there are likely to be major areas of confusion and misunderstanding. To alleviate this problem, as much as possible, several steps have been taken to understand to try and organise the legacy rules in a manner best suited to both initial understanding and continued use whilst playing the game itself. So with something like this, I'm always kind of wondering, did anyone play this outside of the author's group himself? But we get on to personal attributes and characteristics. It's really kind of weird artwork there. And you know, it's not a question of sort of like you know, you sort of like the details that are formula to follow through for creating characteristics. Essentially, an explanation. That's actually technically an explanation of the constitution value, and sort of like split over a page, which you kind of go, really. And then we have sort of like, we have extremely poor constitution level. You're sort of going, you have tables, percentiles, ratings for all of these. So that's constitution table. Then we've got tables for extremely poor constitutional level, exceptional constitution level, which seems overkill. But back in 1978, didn't necessarily know any better. Still, we've got extreme constitution level, and it's going to do this for each of the attributes. And then constitution special capabilities. Pages and pages just on the one stat. I mean, let's just check. I mean, so that's half a page there. 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages, 5, 6, because we got onto constitutional sub-values. And they got another half page there, so essentially we're talking about 5, 6 pages just devoted to the one stat. Now just the same thing for, then we've got strength and endurance, and dexterity, which don't have the same kind of attention to detail, which seems a bit odd. Then we get onto disease resistance. So we have, and then we're covering here floral parasites, fauna parasites, bacterial diseases, sort of like, you know, how to deal with those. We're going, okay. Physical efficiency. I don't know how. Activity points and activity states. At this point, you're kind of going, well, if you're not going the mind boggles, I don't know. I don't know the mind boggles that you're not going the mind boggles. Yeah. So, you know, we have things like basic activity and ability requirements. Digging a hole. 50 plus work factor, heavy digging implement, resources, non-activity, 70%, ability, 20%. Just sort of like, okay. We have okay. We have we've got basically there is 2 races in this game: human and Keatul. I don't know what they are. Doesn't clearly say what they are straight off the page, so probably missed that. But you have a strength and metabolic status table for both species. I'm just going metabolic. You know, and this is dealing with things like foraging, hunting and gathering, cultivation, herding, activities. Base kind of activities for a society. Here we have the Keatu. The Keatu are a race of sentient anthropomorphic organisms that inhabit the northern hemisphere of the planet Skya. They adapted to seasonal cold temperatures with the frigid environment by developing a combination of fur and subcutaneous fats. There we go. The artwork is a sort of a mixture of okay and okay, that's interesting. So just dense with just stuff in here. Okay, okay. Now we get on to intelligence. We're this far into the book. Intelligence value. Concentration allocation. Just, you know, tables for memory sub-value, almost as if it's sort of like, you know, not so much, you know, a role-playing game is sort of like, you know, just a simulation of one. Then we have things like, okay, the artifact enabler. What the hell is an artifact enabler? So, you know, then we have sort of like, interesting here, we have interactions. So we have like an interaction kind of tracker thing there, complete with symbols and so on for tracking those the relationships between player characters and NPCs and so on. That's interesting. It's interesting. And then we get into environment. Planetary section map. So in some ways this is sort of like one of the first kind of planetary romance role-playing games which you would think of. I mean, Tekkamel is a planetary romance role-playing game because it's set on a distant planet. It might look like a fantasy setting, but it's not. Then you also think of things like Skyrim or Jurune. So yes, this is set on another planet. It's a different world, and it's kind of going right. But you know, this is so utterly complex that you know that it didn't survive. I know if you read Heroic Worlds, Lawrence Schick's opinion of this was this is utterly unplayable. You know, we literally got more explanations of paper. There we go. You know, more maps, locations. The modular terrain mapping hex. More explanations of those symbols. Fauna of the world. I mean, you know, it's the problem is that almost nothing stands out because it's so text heavy. You know, yet more definitions of symbols. Just ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, if you encounter this as your first role-playing game, unless the actual designer was running this, probably would have put you off, I suspect. Planetary information sheet, not much to really look at there. And then gamer operator section. The designer on holiday. Okay. So I've got advice in here on preparing a scenario. Taking into account, you know, player space, purpose, authority, closure, patience, responsibility. You know, with almost boxes there to check them off as you're working your way through the process. Potential scenarios and campaign ideas. Preparation, again, sort of like these boxes here, possible check boxes, you know, just to tick off. Again, just really dense playable. I mean, you know, you've got a guide here. Activity point rules of thumb. That's just not rules of thumb. That's, you know, Actually, it's just boggles the mind. Just that someone will sit down and work this out, but they did. The intentionality value. Collected tables section. Oh, God. So then we have that's NPC sheets, I think. Then we have advanced player character record sheet. Concentration factor allocations. So abstract thought, practical thought, simple skills and techniques, emotions, memory, learning and integration, reflexes and news. All that, it just planetary information sheet. And again, you've got these sectional maps to sort of like add in, map out your section, section of the world, and add notes there and there. That's a planetary polar map. And then we have, actually, an interesting thing we have here, overlays, plastic overlay, which is probably one of the first times that's been used in a game. And then rounding it out is a set of designer's notes. I suspect the designer notes are actually going to probably be the most interesting thing about this supplement. Basically how the designer got into role playing, what he was playing, and that, I think, will probably cast some light on the process of creating legacy. Okay, so we've got several pages of design, actually quite a lot of lengthy section of designer notes in here. Don't normally get that in a game, a role-playing game. But we've got here things in the adaptation of other role assumption rules, the rhyme and reason behind the design. And then we've got bits and pieces what he might use with the game, and a bibliography at the end. So yeah, utterly bonkers, weird game, Legacy from 1978, of almost no interest, I suspect, to anybody these days in terms of role-playing, except to collectors who sort of like are interested in oddities like this. I wrote a review of Spawn and Fashion because I've always wanted to look at it. I don't know whether I really want to look at this in any more detail. I will, very likely, but I know it's going to be a hurdle. Anyway, so first off, I want to thank Scott for being able to get hold of a copy of this for me. Do appreciate that a lot, and also for Keith for being able to get it across from California to South California, Southern Carolina, to the UK here. Do appreciate all your efforts there, and then of course I want to thank you for watching. So hope you enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you did, then please do click on the like button down below, and of course if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you posting those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a box containing a book or game which I'll unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, or in this case 20 minutes of me going, what the hell is this? Then please do click on the subscribe button down below. I'm going to definitely need a cup of tea after this. A nice hot cup of tea. In the meantime, thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. I will be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.